Hey everybody, it's time for this week's morning tea. I'm Christine Wilson and I am filming to you today from my office here in Westwood. Yes, this is my pre-K coaching office here where I do all the magic that I do. And it's a little bit noisy here, especially because I'm working right across the street from UCLA and we're on a very busy street. So today if you hear any buses or noise going on, I apologize, but that's where I work. So I just want to talk to you very quickly about a very inspiring book that I read this weekend. I literally got this book in the mail on Saturday, and by Sunday night I was finished with it. It was riveting and it really changed me, and I want to share it with you right now. It's called The Promise of a Pencil by Adam Braun. And basically, Adam talks about his personal story going from a life-changing event that helped him figure out what his purpose in life was, which was to build schools in rural areas of the world for children, and how he just started with $25 in a bank account, and now it's grown to a multi-million-dollar 501c3, and he has hundreds of schools all over the world for children in rural areas. And the most inspirational thing about this book that I want to share with you is, because I have studied leadership, it really came across to me that there were so many things about what he was doing right in his leadership with this particular 501c3 called Pencils of Promise. If you want to, you can definitely go online and look it up. I definitely highly recommend this book for all of you ECE leaders out there. But most of all, what was interesting about his way of leading his 501c3 was he absolutely was doing all of the things that I want to share with you today in this week's morning tea. Now, last week I talked about making structural changes in your program, and this week I want to talk about how structural change is just one small component of what a transformational leader does do. And I want to talk a little bit more today about transformational and charismatic leadership. Those two ideas are very interchangeable. Shamir House, an author, probably over 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, started to come up with these theories about leadership, and they still hold true to this day. You can find tons of journal articles and research that is very current on charismatic and transformational leadership. So I'm only bringing you things, I mean, they may be old in the sense that that's when they began to be talked about 30 years ago, but they're still very new, and that there's still research coming out on these two genres of leadership. And so what I want to do today is I want to share with you three very important components of being a transformational or charismatic leader. Again, charismatic and transformational leaders are people that are going through a personal transformation of their own while they are imparting transformations on their stakeholders, the people that they work with, in a remarkable way that is very positive and uplifting for themselves, their followers, and their programs. And so I want to share these three very important traits with you today. So number one, all charismatic and transformational leaders have a profound effect on their followers. Starting first with the idea that they have their own interest, but they have the ability to turn their own interest into the collective interests of others. Number two is they inspire their followers to be highly committed to the overall purpose. Now, we talked a lot about your overall purpose, the number one thing that you should be concentrating on in your program as a follower. And, you know, again, go back to the first video blog. It's actually a blooper blog, but then I want you to read all of the things that I wrote underneath it. And then go back to last week's, and then you see that I'm talking about this very important thing called purpose. The purpose of your program has to be very clearly articulated. For example, let's say that you're serving children who are English language learners. You know, maybe the majority of the children coming into your program are English language learners. And so maybe your primary purpose and focus for those children upon leaving your program is that they will be bilingual and they will have a positive affinity toward learning. You know, it could be just that simple. It could be that one thing that carries all the rest of the weight of what you do in your program on a daily basis so that you get to that endpoint that's very important. So that's just one example. But if that is what your purpose is, inspiring others to get in on what that purpose is and embrace it for themselves personally is another thing that charismatic and transformational leaders do very well. And another thing that they do in terms of having profound effects on their followers is they model it. They model something very specific. They model personal sacrifice. They model personal sacrifice to get the purpose and the mission done. And that inspires their followers to do the exact same thing. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, yeah, that sounds great, Christine. I don't really know if my staff are these kinds of people. Well, this is kind of the caveat. In personal leadership that ends up transforming other people, those people themselves have to have specific traits too, it turns out. So let's talk about how we transform the role of our followers, all right? So now we're talking about our followers. Number one, the followers themselves have an innate passion and ambition themselves. Someone who sort of comes in and they're just looking for a paycheck might not be the type of person that you can, as a transformational leader, inspire. And maybe these are people that should not be invested in. And that is the cold, hard truth. You want people that come to you and say, I want to be involved. I want to do this. I have a passion for turning ESLs into English, or English language learners into English speaking children, or whatever it is that your mission or purpose is. Excuse me. The other thing is these people are looking to belong to something bigger than themselves. And that is a trait that you want to look for in your followers. If you're in a position right now where you're in hiring, or you're or reducing staff or replacing staff of any type for any reason, think about these two traits. Somebody who is absolutely passionate and has certain abilities that they want to use towards something that's bigger than they are, okay? And third of all, with your followers, remember that these people are born leaders. They're born leaders and they're led by their desire. So, in other words, they're not trying to take over what you're doing, but they know how to lead themselves through the passion that they have in what they do. These are the types of followers that are the most affected by a charismatic or transformational leader. And the third thing that has to have some impact is how the organizational conditions are in the first place. And that's really where you come in as well as a transformational leader. Now, last week we talked about making some of those changes in your program. One in particular with how you use outside support. But the week before that, I talked a lot about how transformational leaders get information and they use organizational learning to inform them about what's going on. Yes, absolutely, the conditions have to be ready and ripe for a transformational effect to take place. I'm going to talk much more about this, and I have a couple of announcements at the end of today's morning tea as I talk about this. But I just want to give you a really quick story. Last year I was in Botswana in Africa, And I was sent there with a group of other doctoral candidates to look at education in Botswana and speak to the Ministry of Education there. And we were to make recommendations. And so we were all over these really rural places in Gaborone and some other places as well. And the one thing that I noticed is that children all over the world really, really have a desire to grow and to learn and to be something. Every child that I ever met, wherever I've been, and I've been lucky because I've traveled quite a bit in my life so far, but they all have this innate desire to learn. And we carry that with us through into adulthood. The only way that some of those things begin to change is because some outside influences might have an effect on us. But imagine the power that you have as a transformational leader to work with adults who have that childlike intuition and innate desire to belong to something bigger than they are, something that can transform them and you into something beautiful and incredible. And that's what I really want to leave you with in today's morning tea. One of the other things that I want to share with you is something that Adam Braun said in his book, The Promise of a Pencil. And he said, make sure that you imagine yourself and put yourself in a place where you can be the best person that you could ever possibly be. I mean, that is really true happiness right there. When you have a purpose in life and you fulfill that purpose with all the passion, it's infectious and it infects all the people around you in positive ways. And those positive people around you are going to carry that in a ripple effect throughout the organization. It'll touch the children, it'll touch the parents, and it'll touch all the stakeholders around you. Okay, so that's a little bit this week about charismatic and transformational leadership, but that's a very little bit that I just shared with you right there. One of the announcements that I'm making this week is that I am going to be offering workshops on leadership very soon. We just started spring, and summer will be here before we know it. This is the end of the school year for most of you. You're sort of winding down, you're looking at your budgets for next year and so forth. And so I too am working very hard right now. But I promise you, at the end of the year, when everyone is celebrating, I will have something for you to get you going one more time. It's either going to be in the form of a webinar, or it might be something where all of you out there can sit and meet with me live. But it's in the works now. And the second announcement that I have to make is I've gotten a lot of feedback and phone calls about coaching. And again, I already promised you that I would have something, and I am almost ready to rock and roll with that. And so that's something that I also want all of you to look out for. So, that's it. That is this week's morning tea. I hope that it's giving you something to think about. And, once again, you can come see me here at prekcoaching.wordpress.com. I'll have a video for you every single week. And of course, Monday through Friday, I will have a daily affirmation for you as well. So take care all, and love and respect. I will see you again right here at Morning Tea next week. Bye.